Hello, welcome to another episode of All Caps. I'm Isaac Anderson, author of The Guard Maze and the Song of Bones. I'm joined by my host, Tim McKay, the author of The Fall of Selvandrea, and our very, very special guest is R.E. Sanders, the author of Demon's Tier. He's a sword expert, he's a bus expert, he's just an all-around expert. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hi both. Thanks very much for having me. Coming to you from Cardiff in South Wales. Lovely day here. Hope you're all well.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. How is the weather over there? Most of us, it feels like in North America, are coming off the edge of a pretty brutal heat wave. So how are things
Yeah,
there?
we had a heat wave. It was a terrible heat wave in the UK. It lasted for 3 days.
Yeah.
Awful.
Everyone lost their minds, and then it rained quite heavily.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well, you mentioned rain. We were talking just before this, and I thought, right, yeah, kind of somewhat rainy season coming your way, and off the tail end of I had a lot of UK friends complaining about the heat, and then here we were getting yes, okay, you know what? I can talk to you in Celsius. So this I'm very excited for what I'm about to say. 40 and 45. We had a few days of that here.
Yeah, people over in the UK don't have any concept of how really hot feels. Yeah. When it gets to 28, like, make it stop.
Yeah.
Actually, I quite like that. It never gets too hot in the UK that it's unbearable, but it does get very humid because it's so near the coast in every direction.
Yeah. Where I am, so I've got the Rideau Canal, here in Ottawa, and it does we're kind of weirdly trapped between, you have, the big channel by Montreal and the Atlantic coming in that way, and you have the Great Lakes from the other direction. So Ottawa gets really humid, and Northern Ontario doesn't by comparison, and most of Quebec varied, but where we are, it's this weird pocket of really intense humidity sometimes. So yeah, our hot is very humid.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So anyways, but yeah, thank you so much for hopping on with us. This is absolutely awesome. You and I have been going back, I think, since I started, as an indie author, and you were one of the very first indie authors I read. I think it was.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's quite nice to know. And you're still reading indie books now, which is
absolutely
recommendations I expect to get.
At this point, it's about exclusively what I read. I almost have to carve out willpower to go, hit any traditional books I want to read, just because I'm already pre-committed to so many great indie, authors. I think it was.
Really they really are. It's a huge world as well. It's almost unlimited possibilities.
Most of my stuff that I read is indie, and if I do read something that's traditional, it was published 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Keeping up with the new stuff on the trad side is pretty hard these days, just because, when I started, it was I think it was Timothy Wolfe, Mike Roberti, and you were the three first indie authors I read. So just how it happens. And yeah, Path of Blades was awesome. So that was a nice little introduction to your work. And now I have started Demon's Tier. So exciting. And it's very fun to see. I want to say this right up front. One of the funnest things following fellow indie authors is just watching the change in prose and the development. I'm already blown away. Like, Path of Blades was good, but if what follows is anything like the prologue, and the parts I've read, like half of chapter 1, 2, like so far, I'm very happy. I am very excited with the direction.
I think it's a step up. Yeah. And I think Demon's Rise, in terms of just pure prose, is a step up again. But Demon's Rise is a more complex, difficult book. I've deliberately, because I'm an idiot, chosen some really difficult character relationships and interactions. I've had to go over them several times to get them right.
So even compared to Demon's Tier, it's a step up.
I think so.
Okay.
But you always hope to improve, don't you? But people have been coming to me recently, and actually, they've picked up my first novella. I don't know.
Yeah, Tan's Last Stand. Yeah.
Which for me, it was a minor kind of thing. I wrote it just to see if I could really. Yeah. And people keep saying, "Oh, yeah, I really love this." I thought, "What? Really?"
I think we all start to feel like that about our early works as we progress, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You get it.
But yeah, my only aim ever really was to write things that people could enjoy, for it to be fun, for it to be readable, not out to change the world. Just want to make people have a good time when they're reading, and then maybe have the odd thought.
Yeah, but no, I mean, very cool to see. And anyways, yeah. So tell us what's going on then in terms of writing. The sequel is coming together. Sequel to Demon's Tier, Demon's Rise, book 2 in the I always say this wrong, so it's the Jantakai, right?
Jantakai.
Yeah.
Jantakai just means twin swords. The series was going to be called the Twin Swords
Got it.
Saga. I thought that sounded a bit boring in the end, so I went for the Elvish, My World Elvish translation of Jantakai of Twin Swords, which is Jantakai.
Very cool.
There are there are two swords in the world. The more you read of the series, you'll get an impression that they are around. They've influenced the events of the world to back down into deep history. And throughout the series, we'll learn more about why, what they can do, what the importance of them is. So the whole saga is telling the story of those swords and how they come into play again. So that's a little bit of a spoiler for the end, but I think it's not a big one because it's obvious it's going to happen. So in case you don't know me, I'm a fantasy author from the UK. I write short tales as well as longer works. I've always written short stories. I've always written stories. I've always written of all kinds. I've written fiction. I've written non-fiction. If I was asked to write something in school, I'd knock off a story in about 5 minutes to get it done. And I maybe when did Possibly come out? 2023. So go back another year. I started 2022. I started thinking, can I write a book? I want to know if I can write a book. Something I always fancied doing, with my ambition to do. So I did it, and discovered I could, which is quite gratifying. So since then, I wrote Path of Blades, which is my first novel, a standalone novel, and then I started Demon's Tier, which was my long-term, project, my labour of love that I'd been planning for probably 20 years. I started thinking about Demon's Tier.
Wow. What drew you to that particular story? Like, what's the genesis of it?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. So I had this idea. I think it was probably the world came first, or the country, and then what that country was like culturally and what people would be like from that country. And then I meshed it in with the rest of the world. Obviously, you've seen the world map. It's a continent, really. It's not the whole world yet. I want to leave my options open for sequels. And how those different cultures might interplay in a quite a realistic way. Because I've studied history, I know how borders and oceans and things affect cultures, how mountains, climate, all that kind of stuff I was interested in. And the story itself, it came from the characters. The characters were very much the second thing I came up with. A little group of characters who were all different, all had their own foibles. None of them are particularly competent in life.
That's always fun.
Nice. Yeah.
Some of them are good at some things, but really, really bad at others. But essentially, they're a bunch of normal people, and they get tangled up in it. It's not like Wheel of Time was one of my biggest influences, probably on how to put this kind of epic story together, where they start very normal, and then because of their destiny and their fate, they become the leaders of the world.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, let's take a sidestep from that. There's no destiny, there's no fate guiding these people. It's just them basically trying to survive.
Yeah.
And the decisions they make guides them deeper and deeper into the heart of this story. And in the end, they have to make a lot of decisions and take a lot of actions that are ultimately going to decide how the whole story ends.
Very nice.
It's a very human story.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be in our world. It isn't, but it could be. They're people. I mean, there are elves and dwarves in the world, but they're also just people. It's not. Yeah. I'm not. There's no dragons in this.
Okay.
There are some beasts, but they're not key to the story. They're more part of the world.
I love
it. As we go on, things are going to get weirder.
Okay. Yes,
it starts deliberately quite prosaic. And Path of Blades was very consciously non-magical, and some people have read it and said this is more like historical fiction.
Yeah, exactly. My thought.
That's what I meant. Very non-magical, very straightforward, but I've got a plan.
Okay.
Things are going to develop.
So the story starts, at least what we've seen so far with Demon's Tier, kind of an intermediary between what you've done before, that more historical fiction feel, and maybe more high fantasy, but maybe it's heading that way, sounds like.
I can't really say, can I?
Yeah. Okay. No spoilers.
But there's signposts. If you look for them, there's signposts. So
okay.
Obviously in Demon's Tier, you've got the magical jewel, which does certain things, but there definitely is magic. There's definitely otherworldly powers. There's gods. There's magical beings.
Yeah.
Well,
there's something to be said
in Path of Blades at all.
There's something to be said for suspending those revelations, because if you dump it all too early, it can help set up expectations for what you're going to see for the rest of the story, but it can also destroy suspense. It can destroy, and the impact of revealing something like that later. So I like books that give me a gradual revelation of what this world entails. So that's very cool. That's exciting. It gives you something to look forward to.
Yeah. Hopefully once as just the saga progresses and you get a bit of an idea of what's coming, that will leave you a bit of excitement. I see what's going to happen here. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned history, and you studied archaeology, right? I want to hear a bit more about that too, and how that's impacted your writing. Because I studied history for one of my undergrads, one of my 2 undergrads, which is just already too much school. But it's something that I've loved for years, and I toyed with the idea of writing historical fiction. And I think, probably not my cup of tea. I love reading it. I don't think I would want to write it. I love fantasy with maybe some of those elements from what I learned, but archaeology to me was always on the fringes of my studies in history, because there's a lot entailed in that. It brings in other fields. It brings in a lot of extra skill sets and knowledge that you don't learn from a purely archival, history focus. So I'm just curious. Yeah, tell us what learning archaeology is like, and tell us how it impacted your books.
So I was just fascinated by history, and at my local, well, not local, but nearby university in Cardiff, because I'm from maybe an hour and a half away, ran a really good archaeology course. So I thought I'd give it a try. And we studied everything from like deep prehistory, so the Neolithic era in Britain, all the way through to the medieval period and the dissolution of the monasteries and that kind of stuff. So archaeology is essentially anything historical in human history. So we're not doing dinosaurs and fossils. Yeah. Human history where you don't have a written source.
Right.
So where we've got written sources, we use them because they generally will tell us what happened, although you can't always trust them because they might be writing for a purpose. If you don't pick up the Daily Mail or whatever tabloid newspaper you know about and take it as fact because it's got an agenda. Where obviously archaeology doesn't have an agenda, but it also sometimes doesn't have a context. Yeah. So if you pull a sword out of the ground, you don't know who it belonged to. So it's trying to make sense of that. And the things I'm really interested in, because I had a very good lecturer who made me look at these things in a different way, are obvious signs of society doing something together. So I'll pull an example that you're probably very familiar with, which is Stonehenge in Wiltshire in the UK. So there's no way that happened by accident. That for the time, that was an absolutely enormous undertaking. Almost beyond belief, moving these huge sarsen stones hundreds of miles with no technology apart from some logs and some ropes.
So you can probably tell us how many aliens it took.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
2 spaceships each. But so the way he was trying to explain it is Michael John Evans, who's absolutely wonderful man. This with a very interesting way of looking at the world was don't think, oh, why did they put that there? What were they doing in it? What was the function of it? Because that's the wrong way to think of it. It doesn't really matter what the function is. You should think of it from the other angle, is that what in their society and culture meant that they could do it and wanted to do it. So think of things like its landscape. So they are modifying their landscape in a way that is impossible to ignore. How would that make a culture feel? There was a hill, now there's this monument. That's the way to look at it. What does it tell us about society? It suggests a stratified society where you've got an upper class who can order people around and can mobilize a workforce, and you've got a lower class who are going to be the workers and then will be excluded. You've got the ring where there's an inner and an outer. So he was making me think in those sorts of ways. So that's what I took forward from my archaeology degree into my writing, is that things generally don't happen by accident, even things you don't understand. There's a reason, and there's often a deeper reason as well.
Very cool.
People do things for apparent face value, but also do things for bigger reasons, societal reasons, cultural reasons. I've always found that really interesting.
Yeah,
Why do
like
you think
that.
Stonehenge was made?
Hmm?
Why do you think Stonehenge was made? What's your
That's
theory?
a really good one. No, if you ever get a chance to come to the UK, I would recommend you go. It's a fantastic place, and seeing the stones up close is even better than seeing them on a picture. It's a genuine wow moment. But there's an interpretation centre nearby, and you can walk around and you can look at. There's little bits of archaeology they've pulled out of the ground, bits of bone, bit of fur, and it says nothing. It says nothing because they don't know. They've got absolutely no idea. Nothing that has been pulled out of the ground is a compelling functional reason for Stonehenge. We don't know what it was for. Probably some sort of temple, the way it was aligned with the sun. But we don't know. Don't know what they're doing there. Were they doing human sacrifice? Don't know. Were they worshipping the sun? Don't know. Was it a dance hall? We don't know. Just don't know. So that's why those sort of functional reasons of what it's for, kind of, you think, let's put them away and think more about what society does this show us. It shows us a very organised society, a society that knows their own place in the landscape and wants to show it. So that's what I say Stonehenge was for. I know it's not a very satisfying answer, but it's a better one than we don't know.
Yeah,
I bet it was a really big guy trying to impress a girl.
That is, if I'd have written that
I can put these things in circles, honey.
If I'd written that in an essay when I was at university, I'd have got a really good mark. That's the sort of thing you loved.
I love it. So good. I love that. I love mysteries in history and in archaeology, because sometimes even just you can have all the written sources in the world and they either clash or they omit things. So you're still left with these huge gaps in knowledge. And like you said, and something I love exploring is even when we do have records, they're biased. They're biased by context. They're biased by the author. People like to say, that history is written by the winners, but often that's not the case. Often you have other counterexamples where it's written by the loser, trying to either showcase the tyranny of those who won or to justify rebellion against those who won. And so you have these sometimes conflicting narratives, or you have examples where you only have one or the other, but not both, and you have no way of piecing together a holistic view. I love it. Like these mysteries.
Good example of that is the Viking invasion of Britain. So everything we know about that is from the Christian writings of the time. Yeah. And obviously the Christians didn't like the Vikings because they were pagan and they came and burnt the monasteries and stole their stuff. So
they were a little bit mean.
Painted them as monsters.
Yeah.
And wanted the world to think they were monsters. And the Vikings didn't keep records of that kind. So we've only got this one voice which is saying they're a bunch of monsters. Whereas the Anglo-Saxons, who probably came and did exactly the same thing 300 years before, we've got nothing like that. There's no bogey tales about the Anglo-Saxons, although they were probably just as bad, if not worse. So that's a really good example of that sort of thing in history.
So you're saying the Vikings were cool, and the Christians were nerds who just wrote stuff down.
Sums it up. There we go. Entire period of history just quickly. Yeah.
Done. Let's move on.
Well, I was going to ask.
This might be a rabbit trail, but you mentioned the early Anglo-Saxons. I remember reading somewhere that England was like old, deep, scary forest. There's like stories like druids, something like that. And there's no early history because it was destroyed or whatever. And Tolkien was trying to do Lord of the Rings, early British history or whatever. Does that any of that make sense? What was the early primordial England like?
A couple of things I can pull out of that. So there's a story that Britain used to be completely covered in forests and it was deforested by people. That's not true. Forest doesn't grow everywhere. There was a lot more forest than there is now. But it's one of those myths that people believe. There used to be all trees everywhere. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. You had grasslands, you had forests, you had hills. And then the bit about Tolkien. So Tolkien's feeling was that because of the Norman conquest, when William came across to Hastings and defeated King Harold, and then the Normans violently and brutally replaced the entire English upper class and tried to suppress the English language. as I would say, I am English, lost a whole raft of culture and history. So he had, I've got it. Can I pull it out? He read a book or a series of stories called the Inglinger Saga, which is it's like a mythic history of the kings of Norway. And if you go to the very end, it's about real historical people, and it says where they lived, what they did, who the children were, who they fought against. But as you go back in time, each successive generation becomes less and less rooted in reality. So the first ruler it mentions in the Inglinger Saga is Odin himself. So the Norwegian kings who were real people trace their line of descent back to Odin. And then in between, you've got all this stuff where you kind of got this halfway house where these people, these kings, they were probably real. They were probably real people, but some of the things they did were heavily mythologized because it was told by it was an oral storytelling tradition. Bet like the story of Beowulf, that's almost certainly based on some real people and some real places, with this fantasy element thrown in of Grendel the troll and Beowulf fighting his mother. So. Beowulf again is probably someone who was real. This character Beowulf is referred by several names in a lot of these different sagas, but the things they did was mythologized and made heroic, and that's what Tolkien wanted for England. That's what he wanted to write. And if you read the English saga and then read the appendices of the Lord of the Rings, it's just the same. It's exactly the same. You've got these long lineages of people and all the amazing stuff they did, and you go further and further and back in time, and you get to the point where they're all descended from God. And that's what Tolkien felt was lost during the Northern Conquest. And England doesn't have any of those deep histories. Some of the tales that we think are English tradition are actually drawn from other sources. Like Arthur is a French tale, and Merlin is a Welsh hero. We kind of melded them a bit and went, oh, that's English.
Robin Hood's French too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was Tolkien's reason for one of his reasons for wanting to create the world of the Lord of the Rings was to create something of that majesty. But I can hardly recommend the Inglinger Saga. It's an incredible read. It's only a book about that thing. But yeah, so you read it and you go, I know where this came from.
I like that. On the topic of Tolkien, well, because Tolkien famously created a language first and then created a fiction story, which still is mind-boggling. And we were talking before, about how you created a world before actually diving into the stories itself. And I was thinking, because looking at some of the short story titles and some of the names in your book, I was curious, one, just about the world creation, how that happened in real time. Where was your focus? Just tell us about fleshing out the world. But in terms of language, I'm curious what sagas of history influence your version of Elvish, your language choices. Is it more Viking? Is it Celtic and English? Where are your language choices coming from?
So I can answer one of those questions with the same example. So where the story of Demon's Tears starts and where some of my short stories are set is a land called Banagar, which is a northern isolated landlocked country surrounded by mountains. I wrote that as just somewhere I wanted to live. It's a bit like a cross between Scotland and Scandinavia, but without the oceans.
Nice.
They're like Vikings with no boats, essentially.
Yeah.
The way I imagined that first was Britain if we'd never been invaded by the Normans. What might that feel like? And the language I've used for them represents that. So it's based on a mix of Icelandic and Gaelic. So you see the odd phrase in Banagarian. I've written. Here we go. This is where you go. Okay, Rob really is a massive nerd. I've written a 680 line poem telling the early story of Banagar in Anglo-Saxon alliterative verse.
Nice.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
And translated it. So
that's great. See, things like that are great, though. Finding those in books. Is that something you're going to feature? Have you already put it somewhere, or are you?
I think I have included the odd line of it. So the prologue of Demon's Tear, which you did mention, that is the climax of this poem, but written in prose rather than verse. I've got the verse version. You want to read the verse version? it's around. I can publish, or maybe I'll publish them at some point. Probably won't publish the translation though, because that's a bit beyond. But I wanted to see what the language looked like, how I could then imagine them talking, and it sort of all gave a bit of a vibe of the country. Scots, Norse, feeling sort of country.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then the rest of the world, one of the conceits, because me and a friend sat down at a pub and we just talked about it and like what would the world look like, and it was like the main conceit was medieval Europe if the Romans had never existed. What would that look like? And I think we figured it would be a lot more tribal. The countries would be much less linked, because the Romans did link everything together and made it quite a homogenous culture in the early stages of the first millennium BC. So you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have had that time of sophistication and the time of like Dark Age where it all reduced. So yeah, that was the sort of thought experiment that led to the creation of the world.
Very cool.
Nice, cool.
Yeah, and the languages used in the rest of the world are total cheats. Quite often they're just random syllables. So sorry.
Hey, that counts. That absolutely counts. There's nothing more fun than just playing around with, okay, how does this sound? And how does this sound? And
It's a lot in their cases. What does look good on the page? Because if it doesn't look good on the page and it looks awkward on the page, it's not going to work.
And what sounds good out loud, which counts a lot, especially once you get into audiobook life.
Oh well, that's the problem I'm going to have down the line. If I do think about making audiobooks, how I'm going to pronounce some of these things.
Yeah, you're going to have to come up with a very extensive guide for some of those words that I've seen. I'm like, oh, now I understand why people are like, I need a pronunciation guide. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Is that something you're considering anytime soon, or is that kind of far off in the distance? Once
an audiobook, yeah, people keep thinking about it, and I've mentioned this to you, Tim, but I've got a recording set up at home, and I've been sitting trying to do it, and it's just taking me so long. Yeah, I don't know if I might admit defeat on that and see if I can get an audiobook narrator to do it for me, because purely that the technology point of view, it works okay, but it's going to potentially take me the rest of my life to do a novella. So
fair.
I've got other things to do.
Yeah, it is a whole other extra load of work to add. It's fun to do, but you have to commit essentially the time of the novel itself to the act of creating the audiobook. So yeah, if you want to focus on just writing, I can't recommend it. And this is having done it myself just recently. So totally worth it, but not something I would recommend to everyone for sure. Yeah, very cool. Now we are seeing Bella in here, Alex in here.
Bella, Alex.
Am I right about this? I know I always mix up who's part of which group, but you're all part of the Secret Scribes, right?
Yeah, so Alex, Bella, all part of the Secret Scribes, and see if anybody else has come in. So Dave Lawson, Piper, Bill Adams, Lama Bayan. I'm going to forget people. Sean O'Doyle.
Damien's part of it, right?
Damien is no longer part of it.
Oh, okay.
Because we're a fantasy collective, and he wanted to go on and do more horror. So
interesting. I didn't know.
He's now in Dark Vale because they're doing more horror stuff.
Okay.
Lorraine Douglas, sorry, mentioned Lorraine, and no, it's Damien. Sorry, Damien. I was thinking of Damien. Damien is still part of Secret Scribes.
Okay, I knew he was still focused on his Tome of Haren World, so I was thinking
Damien, yes. Eamon, no.
Eamon, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, that makes way more sense.
I have a small collection of my Secret Scribes paperbacks of it. Oh, Greg Terrell.
Yep. Okay.
And I've got a few of them on ebook, so I couldn't show them. Like Sean's book, I've got an ebook, and I'm collecting more to read through.
No, very fun. Yeah, because Secret Scribes, that was what, 2 years ago?
We've just gone past our 1 year anniversary.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it was like May 2024.
Okay. Yeah, it's awesome to see. I love seeing indie authors teaming up and supporting each other.
What's it like being a part of a group like that? Like, what do you guys do?
We mostly moan.
Complain about.
But it means we do it in private, and we don't clog up Twitter with various sadnesses, and we celebrate each other's successes because we occasionally have successes, and we read each other's books and do beta reads and give critiques and just generally give us support because we're all in the same boat of sitting there and writing words and trying to make them make sense.
So it's the internet version of what Tolkien and C.S. Lewis did with their little group.
Absolutely, yeah. Going to the pub and then talking weird languages.
Yep. I heard that Willow Wraith Press, I think they're putting out an anthology Any plans on the Secret Scribes front?
That's our anthology.
Oh, it's Secret Scribes
Secret Scribes are publishing an anthology.
Okay.
But it's largely through the very hard work of Bill Adams and Alex. So they've been talking about it as Willow Wraith.
Fair, yeah, they've been talking. I heard about it on a Willow Wraith.
Yes, they did a podcast. I've mentioned it a couple of times as well. Yeah, it's really exciting. So we've all written a longish short story. I think they're between 6,000 and 10,000 words each.
Okay, yeah, that's getting a little longer.
On the theme of locks, because we're secret. And it's been edited and it's just in production now. I don't think we've got a date yet, although I think we're just getting ready to look for art readers. So it could be quite exciting. The short stories are fun because you're not committing the same time as you are for a novel. And you can dip in, dip out.
Yeah.
Read a line of one, think fancy it.
I can't say more, but I'm currently editing for an anthology, a similar project, and it's very fun to see. And that's the thing, is it lets authors give little snippets of their world or experiment with something outside of these huge, Sega worlds that we work on. It gives you the chance to play around with just new ideas. So it's very cool to see what, like, a lot of these are authors I've read, and then I see what they're doing, kind of testing new waters. Very fun, very fun. And it gives you a small dose, so it's kind of more palatable. You're not committing as much time, which
yeah. Well, hopefully, if we've got readers who've read one of our books, they might pick up the anthology, and then they'll get introduced to all of them because we've got some really great writers in Secret Scribes. They should be really good.
Yeah, that's fun. That's I think the last big one I saw that came out was Advent of Winter. Do I have that one right?
Yes, that's supposed to be really good. I remember
that was one I need. That's one I need to check out. Because I'm on a bit of a novella and short story kick right now. I just finished judging for a writing competition, and it was all short stories, and they were all only 1,000 words. That was the max. Shortest was maybe 750 words, but most of them were about 1,000, so not very long at all. But when you're blasting through about 300 of those while judging, adds up very quick. It's a lot of fun, but the talent is again, a lot of us, we either start with maybe a shorter novella or a novel. But then you get into Sega territory, these are awesome door stoppers, and it becomes difficult to get back to that place where you can compress a full story, a meaningful, kick-ass, impactful story into very little space.
Yes.
It almost takes a whole other level of talent.
I found writing my short story for the anthology the most difficult thing I've done. I was just finishing off I was writing Demon's Rise at the time. Demon's Tear, no problem. Not through that in a year. It's less than a year writing. I think it was about 9 months to draft it. And then I sat down to write the short story, and it was basically that blank page. Crap, what am I going to write here?
Yeah.
Sensation. And it took a really long time. I wrote something, and I had a clear idea in mind, and then I got to the end of it was like 8,000 words, and it was just like, this is nonsense. I sent it to Bill, and he sent it back going, what are you trying to say? I know what I'm trying to say. It's just not necessarily on the page. So yeah, and then I had to go away and edit it and rewrite it. I'm happy with where I got at the end. But yeah, it was that compressing a story into a short space of time was a challenge.
Yeah. And I apologize, Natalie. I will get on it. It is on my TBR is impossibly long, but
it's just too many books, isn't it? I mean,
so many good books.
Pile beside my bed, literally like that.
Yeah. I have one beside me right now, and I have more downstairs in my reading nook. So like, I'm just flooded with books right now. And it's the best problem in the world to have. But oh my gosh, And I don't know. I'm curious if I feel like Isaac, you and I have maybe talked about this before, but I'm curious for both of you. I've gotten slower at reading since I became an author. I used to read so quickly, and it's just that's gone. That is so gone. It's like a part of my mind I can't turn off anymore. And now books that used to take me a week take me a month,
Yeah, generally. I find I've got less energy for reading, especially if it's a day where I have been writing.
Yeah.
I find writing quite tiring. And then by the time I get to bed, I'm just like head down. And also I read more, I think I read more critically.
Yeah, exactly.
Picking it apart like an author. Although actually I found a holiday book I read while I was on holiday, which is a Bonnie Cornwell book. And this is the first book in ages where I've just read it like a reader. I couldn't. His writing's so good. I couldn't find any faults with it at all, really. And I must have read it in like a couple of days because it just. And it was just. I was like, okay, that's how I used to read.
That's a fun feeling. Yeah. I keep getting that with some short stories I can blast through, and the exceptions I've found more recently. Sometimes like a longer book, it will take me the first 100 or 200 pages to get back to my normal pace, and then I'll blast through the next 200 to 300. Like Bill Adams' God's Blood Tragedy. It took me, he can attest to this. I kept saying, I am reading it, I promise. It took me probably 2 months to read the first 200 pages.
Yeah.
And it took me probably 5 days to read the last 400 pages.
Yeah.
That's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. So I can't make promises anymore for how quickly I'm going to be able to read. It's just, it'll happen when it happens, people, but it will happen or I'll die trying, Yeah. But I was saying to Isaac before you hopped on, from reading the prologue and from what I've read, this instantly jumped up to the number 2 on my paperback TBR instant. So I'm very excited to finish reading Demon's Tier, hopefully in time for Demon's Rise.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like, again, same kind of thing where the prose instantly was one of those books where I'm like, oh, I can blast through this.
That's one of my main aims is when writing is to make sure the prose just flows and there's no speed bumps. There's no like awkward, oh, I have to read that again. What does it mean?
Yeah.
Even if you just write really short sentences sometimes just to keep it really easy to read. It doesn't have to be simple.
Mm-hmm.
But easy to read, flowing is what I aspire to, and I still think I can improve on that.
Clarity above all.
Absolutely.
Clarity, yeah.
Make sure that does it say what you think it says? Will your reader pull out of it what you think it says? If that's it, yeah, good. Move on.
I think too, some authors, especially newer authors, but ones who've been trained in writing, fall into this trap. I know I did, and it's something I've worked to correct on. Is we almost overcorrect, and it's not about clarity is absolutely key, but I think in the effort to avoid purple prose, there's almost an overcorrection towards punchiness and towards simplicity, but without poetic flow. And now for certain genres that really works, like thrillers and some sci-fi, not all. There's a line there. Epic, like space operas, you don't want that, but thrillers, sci-fi, you do, But I've noticed that the books that really work for me nowadays are the ones that have that middle ground, the variety of sentence length. They have short, long, and all that in between. But it's that flow, it's that poetic, it's the part that just lets you glide across the page. You know?
That's
I'm reading another book right now that great author, so far really good story, but really like it falls into this trap that I'm talking about where it has that choppiness. It has that, it's just description and dialogue and action and description and dialogue and action. And it's all very punchy. And I used to see I've migrated away from, I see why authors fall into that trap. And I realize now, no, like the poetic, the flow, I think flow is the right word. Poetic can go too purple, but the flow is key, and it's that is something you almost have to learn just by osmosis,
Yeah.
I
think reading what you've written really honestly is the way to do that. Does it flow? Does it really flow? Not just is it clever, does the writing flow? I think one of the things I do like about writing epic fantasy, is you can meld those styles. So there's space for those slow moments where you have a landscape that unfolds and you can be quite poetic and really build the scene up. Like I imagine it like, those big long shots in the Lord of the Rings movies where it pans across the mountains and you're like, yes, I want to write that. And then you have action scenes, which is snap. You can do both. And I read a lot of thrillers and like non-fantasy genres. Like I've got a whole shelf full of each old. And sometimes when you got an action scene, it doesn't have to necessarily be physical action. It can be emotional action with things happening. You then can change into a more snappy sort of tension kind of, and then go back again. So that's one thing to fantasy I think really is allowed. You can have those different styles. Yeah.
I think part of the big appeal for me is I like that blend. And same thing. I read tons of thrillers. I read tons of the faster, punchier, writing, and then I read these, big epics, and there's space for what's in between. And I read historical fiction too, which is its whole other category and tends to be much slower, but in a different way. And like the fun thing about a genre like epic fantasy is you get to blend everything you love. You get to really have fun with it, which I think is key as an author. I have definitely hit points, and I'm curious for either of you. Like burnout is so much easier to hit if you aren't having fun doing it. If you aren't just letting your imagination go wild, you know. It's an easy trap to fall into as an author. You get caught up in the plot or in the marketing and the expectations, and you lose sight of the fun that's supposed to be storytelling. You know,
the marketing and expectations thing is the worst bit of it.
Yeah,
I started in, actually I'd finished Demons Rise, and I was sending it off to readers, and I've got a proofreader who reads things and tells me when it's rubbish, and she really does tell me when it's rubbish. So that was gone. I thought, I don't want to think about that. I'm going to do something completely different. I'm not ready to start writing book 3 yet. I need a break. So I thought I'd write a new book, and I've just found a subject. It's a slightly like historical fantasy. It's like historical fantasy is probably the best way to describe it. Set in Dark Age Scandinavia. And did a bit of research, wrote a story down. It's a story from the Stargers, so it's kind of like a retelling, but with my own twists on it. And I just loved it. I love the research, love reading about it. It's just a really fantastic time in history, and you can really imagine what it was like, a bit like that kind of Cornwellian way of creating a vibe of a place. And I wrote half a book. I wrote like 25,000 words in a few weeks. It's just like, I love this. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. And then another thing got in the way, and I'm just desperately trying to finish it, trying to carry that momentum through. But it was just like pure joy to sit down and write it every time I did.
Yeah, I think you have to do that every once in a while, you know, just to hold on to that passion. And like you said, momentum. If you don't have that momentum, it gets so hard to just push through something longer. You know,
I think that's the key piece of advice. Lamia knows mine. She's read the book I'm talking about. Really enjoying it. So the key bit of advice I would give to a new author: finish stuff. It's so easy not to. I had a half a book written for 20 years, sitting in like folders on my computer, and I never touched it. And like, no one's ever going to read it if it's half a book. Finish it. Make it shorter. Write a short story, but finish stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can get people to read it. You get their feedback. You move on.
I'm about 95K into my sequel to The Fall of Sylvandria, and I've put that aside to, I mean, it's been a long time coming. It's taken way longer than earlier works, and I think I know why. I'm finally getting back into the groove, but I've now put it on pause because I'm writing a novella for the upcoming Sphinx, that's a tight schedule, but it is absolutely bringing the passion back. And now I'm like, okay, I'm finishing this. So that's a nice thing. It's a short project, so I can at least carry it to the finish line, you know? And that I'm committed to. And then I can carry that momentum, hopefully, back into the sequel. Because, like you said, my biggest worry is if I leave the sequel too long, I'm going to lose the passion. I'm going to lose the persistence and be one of those authors who lets something sit way too long.
Yeah, you don't want to have that feeling that you open your Word document and go, no, shut it again.
Luckily, I've never felt quite there. There's just been life has come in the way. I think has been, there's been life delays. So luckily, I don't think it's been a loss of that. But it's the biggest fear as an author. Especially writing something longer. It's got to be tough because I mean, we were talking like Demons Rise, long book. It sounds like that's going to be a hefty chunker. Keeping that going for 1-2 years, however long it takes, that takes a whole other level of gumption, character.
You've got to really be motivated to finish it. Otherwise, you won't.
Yeah. So, hey, there's Timothy Wolf. We were talking about you earlier.
Hi.
Hail the democracy.
The Lizard King is here.
The Lizard King is here. Brilliant. What else? We talked about Secret Scribes. We talked about history.
Well, speaking of history, would you like to play a little game?
Yeah, let's have some
games. I love games.
I created a little game for you. A little something that I like to call the Nightmare Time Capsule.
Okay.
So you are going to crawl into this time capsule.
Yep.
And you're going to be sent away to another place. You can only bring one thing with you. So when you know the place, you can decide what you're going to bring. But we're going to do a couple of these. And you can't bring the same thing with you to each place. It's got to be a different thing each time.
Reasonable. Yeah, okay, I can work with those rules, yeah.
So the very first place you're going to end up is 300 BC.
Okay.
So if you were to suddenly appear in 300 BC, what would the problems be for you, and what would you bring to kind of alleviate some stress?
300 BC. I've got to admit, this is a period of history I've never studied.
Well, Alexander the Great was doing stuff.
Yeah.
People had spears and sandals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things you could have in your favor if everyone else has got sandals on is to have a pair of boots.
Bring a good pair of boots with you.
Yeah. In the kingdom of the sandals, the man in the boots is king. Is that how that saying goes?
There's a clip right there.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think that does make sense.
Confuse everybody. So I think
if
any technology,
if you go back in time and the main thing you bring that is from the future is improved clothing, I think that sets you up pretty good. You're like the richest person on the planet then.
I mean, yeah, what did people spend money on in 300 BC apart from clothing, really?
Either that or you become the counterculture hipster that everyone doesn't like, and that could be, that can be problematic in its own way.
Yeah, look at that guy. Look at that guy with his boots. Let's ostracize him. Maybe they'll just stamp on their toes and win them over through sheer brute force again.
Perfect.
The loss of anything else, I'm going to stick with my boots because I think any technology would be useless. And I think if turning up any kind of weaponry is going to make you a target.
Yeah.
True.
Yep. I mean, boots hopefully less likely to make you a target unless they're kind of like, red cowboy
flashy boots.
Yeah.
With like little gemstones and like sparkles.
Turn up to see Alexander the Great in your red cowboy boots now. That's the no-no.
You're gone. So good.
All right. Okay.
Let's do it.
1899.
End of this 1899.
The end of the cowboy era. The beginning of aspirin.
I've got a feeling that you're probably one of your biggest risks in 1899 is dying of some horrific disease or infection. So I'm going to take some antibiotics with me.
Nice. It's a nice
boring answer, but I think if you wanted to make sure you survived and didn't just die horribly the way a lot of other people were, have a pack of antibiotics and don't share them.
Never share them.
I'm not getting. I'm going to have the resistance. No, you're not getting the resistance.
There you go.
And then you can create a super bug, unleash it on the world around you. And
I'm not sure I want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not going to that kind of despotic yet. But
where in the world would you want to be in 1899? Would you stay in England, or would there be anywhere else you'd want to be?
Just thinking. I'd be happy in England. I think that's about the time we were.
I mean, you're kind of in like Sherlock Holmes time. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, just before the Boer War, isn't it?
Yeah. Seems like a good age to be in. Yep.
Yeah, there would be worse places. All
right, next.
Australia, for example.
Terrible place.
Yeah.
1300. This might be more in your wheelhouse.
1300, yes. Now, I wonder maybe I should have saved my antibiotics for this one. The Black Death. I mean, there's not much you can do if you get the plague, is there?
Nope.
Having your iPhone isn't going to help you.
You could just get better.
Yeah.
Everyone just kind of died. They could have just got better.
Yeah. I'm allergic to horses as well, so
that's funny.
That's going to cause a problem if I wanted to be a knight or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I should take my antihistamines. I mean, I know this is on a theme, but if I bring my antihistamines, and then I can become a knight and lord it over everyone.
Then there's you have a legend built around you. He's some knight, but to be a knight, he takes some magic thing.
Yeah.
If you take away the magic thing, he can't be a knight anymore.
And he keeps sneezing.
Yeah. He keeps sneezing.
Isaac, who did we just have on? Who did we just have on? And we were talking about this because I'm allergic to horses too, like really badly allergic to horses. So we just talked to someone about this, didn't we?
I think so. I thought you said you were allergic to cats, and you have a cat. And I think I was confused about why you had a cat if you're allergic to cats.
I'm allergic to cats and dogs and horses, and I have 2 cats and a dog. And
okay, yeah. So we decided you're not allergic. You're just allergic to hair.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah, but no, there was something specific about horses and I'm forgetting why it came up, but this is exactly it. Is yeah, all my his fantasies about charging in with the horde of the Rohirrim, at the last battle of at the Battle of Minas Tirith. Like, no, I'm already out. I'm already sneezing.
And I have a new theory. I don't think you're allergic to hair or fur. I think you're allergic to the sweat of that animal. You don't like horse sweat. You don't like cat sweat. You don't like dog sweat.
There we go.
And you've got some really sweaty cats.
Nope. But Dan, let's maybe it's dandruff or something. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, but I'm with you on the debilitating can't be a knight.
So I'm gonna throw in a little teaser for Demon's Tears. This is something for you to look out for, Tim. I'm very allergic to horses. They make me really ill. I've ridden horses once, and I didn't sleep a wink the night afterwards because my asthma flared up. Couldn't see. It was awful. Right.
Yep.
Pay attention to what you read about Banagar. Bear allergy to horses in mind and see what you notice.
Okay.
I'm just going to leave that there.
I'm excited. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a reaction quite that bad, but the last time I was around horses, I did get hives all across my arms, and about an hour later is when it finally hit my face. I think I accidentally rubbed my eye, and my whole face just went, swollen. My eyes were basically shut. I think I grabbed a picture, and it was one of the funniest pictures of me you'll ever see, which is why, of course, you never will see it. But I mean, yeah, very dramatic reactions for sure.
Well, so maybe horses just don't like you. Maybe horses can do that to people they don't like.
It was maybe
on purpose. I'm sure horses hate me. So I used to keep guinea pigs. I'm quite allergic to guinea pigs. The hairy guinea pigs really triggers me. And one time, one of my guinea pigs bit me, and put me in hospital for a week.
Oh my gosh!
Wow!
I almost lost my finger.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, that's way more severe than any allergy reaction.
So Tim, never let a horse bite you.
Apparently, holy crap! Yeah. Wow.
No. The consultant, I saw a consultant when I was just beginning my recovery, and he went, I wish I'd got you for my book. I was like, what are you on about? I wrote a book about all people who had weird animal bites. Do you remember that Welsh rugby player who stuck his finger through a cage bars in the zoo and got bitten by a tiger? I treated him. But I've never had someone bitten by a guinea pig. Yeah, the bite went in just there.
Ooh.
Into the tendon sheath of this finger, and it was horrific.
Oh, that's brutal.
It was like it with a hammer. The worst part of it was, as well, I had to cancel my guitar lessons.
Oh no!
And my guitar teacher wasn't impressed. He was like, "Well, are you in spinal tap or something? How can you be put in hospital by a guinea pig?"
By a guinea pig bite, yeah. It's hard to, it's hard to get a letter that a boss or a teacher or anyone is going to believe.
Everyone I know, everyone I met, and all the staff in the hospitals, all the nurses and doctors, they all laugh their heads off at me, and are still laughing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's really funny.
Yeah. They can laugh now. There was a time, when it first happened, it was really funny. And then it wasn't funny at all for some time. It's funny again now.
Yeah, but when it's life-threatening in the moment, yeah. Oh my gosh. So I can't believe that is just actually boggling. I've never heard of even just an animal reaction, to a pet or even a horse. Like, I've never heard of a reaction quite that bad.
No, it wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Wow. Oh,
that's crazy.
Hey, what were we talking about?
Well, we have one last time period to visit.
Oh, one last time period. Okay, let's go.
Let's do it.
2066. We're jumping to the future, man. This is the far future. Radios can walk around and eat food.
You can't say 2026 just to bar that as an option.
Yeah.
It's 2066, man. What are you going to bring with you to the future?
Okay, I've got an answer for this already. I'm going to bring my Gibson Les Paul electric guitar because I think by that time it will probably be quite valuable. It's a USA made Nashville guitar, so it's already gained in value since I bought it, so I'll take that with me.
I mean, you said Gibson, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's a solid lump of mahogany, so if someone attacks me, I'm going to kill them with it.
I think people will be excited to see you too in the future. If you go in the past, people freak out.
Yeah.
But I feel if you go in the future, you say, I'm from the past, I think people will be more receptive of you.
Yeah, they're less likely to burn you as a witch.
Yeah.
We hope.
Well, they also would view you more as like a child.
Yeah.
Rather than like an invader.
And they're like, haha, you haven't even got a holographic phone or whatever it is you're going to have in the future.
They're
Unless
excited
it
to
ends
share
up
things
being
with
like,
you.
What's that movie? where it's like a little bit in the future and everyone has become really, really dumb.
Yeah. Back to the Future Part 2.
Okay, well, there's that too, but no, there's another
Wall-E.
one.
Wall-E.
A Bug's
there's
Life.
Wall-E too. Okay, so there's a lot of movies that do this. No, the one I'm thinking is like political.
It's Idiocracy, right?
Idiocracy. Thank you. Yeah. There we go. So I'm like, so unless you go to Idiocracy, and then you can just become the king or something.
Yeah.
So there we go.
I know things.
Yeah.
You sure you don't want to bring your poisonous guinea pig? I think that'll protect you.
Yeah.
My gosh. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't just you. For all we know, you just have a extremely toxic guinea pig. So
fair.
Oh man. All right. Okay. Let's flip back to this. But speaking of your guitar, I want to hear a little bit more about your music side. Two things about you that stood out. We were chatting before. We were like, okay, music. I want to hear more about your music, and I want to hear more about your swords, because I always see you holding that big ass great sword.
Because you give me the vibe that you're like a swordsman.
Right.
You know how the swords work, and I assume you have actually either done entertainment with it, or you've actually been in some kind of combat with it, or I can just tell you meet with people and you sword fight sometimes.
That's the vibe I give, and it's deliberate. So I'm a bit of a bluffer when it comes to swords. I really like them. I like, because I write about them, I like to have them to hand so I can know what it feels like. So this one, for example, it's not a real sword. It's a synthetic blade, but it is a great sword, and it's weighted. So if just to hold it, you can get more of a feel of what it would be like to carry it, what to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thought of actually swinging something like that into another person fills me with a certain horror. But I think I bring that to my books. If you've only read a fight scene of mine, they're quite visceral. I have a very good friend who is genuinely a martial arts expert. He's done all sorts of hand-to-hand fighting and historical European martial arts, which is mostly long sword fencing. So we talk a lot, and we do hit each other with swords when I see him. My Twitter profile thing is me holding a sword that he's standing opposite me, and he's about to hit me over the head repeatedly because he's much better than me. So when I'm writing fight scenes, I bounce ideas off him, because I'm a writer. I know how to tell the story of a fight and how to describe it, where he knows the mechanics and the nitty-gritty. And I say things like, would this work?
Yeah.
And sometimes he says, no, that wouldn't work. You're an idiot. But sometimes he agrees. So the culmination of A Path of Blaze, Tim will know this, he's read it, is one of the characters doing a technique where they spin. Because you'll have seen in every sword fight in mainstream media, people spin around with their swords. And if you see any historical martial artists, they'll say that person would die, because turning your back on someone who's trying to kill you is a really bad idea. But I wanted to see, is there a way you can write a technique where you do spin? And that's what happened at the end of Path of Blades. And my mate said, no, that's quite feasible. It puts him in a position where he's, for that moment, safe, and it lets him attack from a different angle. So I've got more of a working knowledge, and I occasionally pick the swords up and practice with them. But if I would probably die if I was in a sword fight.
That's awesome, though. Yeah. Okay. Back to your music. So tell us. So you have your awesome Gibson guitar, which instantly makes me jealous. And so you said you were taking or teaching lessons?
I was taking lessons.
Taking lessons at the time. Okay.
Yeah. So I've played since I was 18. I always wanted to make music. I started as a singer in my band at sixth form. And we played a few covers, and then we started writing songs, and then we all split up and went to different places. And I sort of carried on playing until I got to the point where I figured I could do stuff myself. So I actually spent a lot of time writing songs. It's when you're creative, these things just come out. You can't really stop them. Not something I've done for a little while, but I still pick up my guitar and play a lot. In fact, I've got one just here. That's the sword going. So there's never a guitar very far away.
Nice.
From me. There's something I enjoy doing.
Have you put your epic poem into music?
No, that sounds a bit. I don't know. That sounds a bit much.
Come on, man, commit.
Translating's fine, but draw the line at putting the music.
Yeah. A lot of the early songs I wrote was a friend of mine who'd written just some really like almost stupid poems, like limericks, quite blue. And he said, "Can we make these into songs?" I was like, "Yeah, that'd be funny." So I started writing little stupid songs to put these stupid lyrics to music. And then he was like, "This is really good. You should do a bit more of this." So got into writing a bit more.
That's fun.
The trouble is that the type of music I like to play involves a full band. Hence the Les Paul, but you have to do all the people, and sometimes dealing with people is not my favorite thing, really. It's much easier to sit on your own and write.
Yeah, that I mean, there are some authors I talk to who are definite extroverts, and they love hanging about. But when it comes to I mean, I've done some group work in the writing world, but I love the solo act. I really do. I think most of us, we're at our best when we can just sit behind,
autonomy, isn't it? You just can make your own decisions.
Yeah.
That's the problem with trying to form bands, is you have to get 3 or 4 people in the same room at the same time, wanting to do the same things. Well, the actual bit of playing and being with people and making music together is brilliant. I love it. I will do it again at some point, but the organization of getting people there is kill me now.
Yeah.
Also, why so many of us are going the self-pub route, because you get even more of that control over your own work.
Ultimate control, really. You can do everything you want. I mean, I even designed the cover for half the blades, which just
very cool. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it's I was promised while I was writing it a cover. That's backwards, but by one of my nieces who's an art student, and then it got to the point where she actually did a draft of it but never showed it to me. I think she was nervous, and then she got into a finals and got massively stressed out, and I didn't want to bother her, so it never happened. I was like, last minute, I need to have a cover, so I got on Canva and I just put some shapes together, and that'll do. So some people say, "Oh, I really like that cover." Like, really, seriously, I designed that in 10 minutes.
That's so awesome. Yeah, no, I always thought you got someone to do it for you. I had like
pretty good for 10 minutes.
It's pretty good for 10 minutes.
It is. I gave it some thought. What kind of vibe do I want? And I know Path of Blades came actually from sort of samurai tales more than the medieval stuff. It's got that. I thought it had that kind of vibe. It's all about honor and duty and doing what you should do or what is the right thing. And that cover I thought represented that a little bit. I know it was a quick bit of work, but the simplicity of it did work. I've actually tried to get a couple of covers commissioned that are a bit better, and I just didn't like them so much, so I just stuck with that one.
Fair, very fair. I mean, it's worked, and I now that you say that, I remember watching you on calls like this, initially talking about it and hearing this kind of thing, and having a sense of what I was getting myself into when I picked up the book. Exactly what you're describing, because you had that description of that samurai feel and the honor and the valor, and so it gave me a tone that I was expecting when I went into it, and then seeing, it ended up being in a setting different from what I expected, but those undertones were absolutely there. So
it's more the atmosphere. It's very European, and some people picked up and said, "Oh, it's like a Norse type story." I guess the opening battle sequence probably has parallels with some of the way that Bernard Cornwell writes the Anglo-Saxon Viking stuff.
Yeah,
because I've read that a lot of that at the time, and I'm absolutely unashamed to have drawn that as an influence. So I think maybe that's. But having those two styles meet, I'm happy with that. If that's a comparison people are going to draw, that's kind of what I was shooting for.
Yeah, it definitely worked. So very cool. Yeah. I mean, that's so awesome. It's just, again, this is a blast it feels like a blast from the past for me, because it would have essentially been 2 years ago now.
Yeah, you must have read it shortly after it came out, and I haven't read it since.
Fair, yeah.
I find I can't make myself do it. I feel like I've got other things to do. I moved on, and I'm worried I'd be a bit squirmy. It's like reading a bit of old writing. I'm proud of it. For a first go, I think it's a pretty good story, and it's a quick read. It's a short book for an epic fantasy book. It's only about 70,000 words. I think, was it 300 pages? 300 pages, but quite well spaced.
Do you find you get that way with reading even just a first book in a series? Because you're working on a sequel right now. I assume there's a lot of going back to book one while you're writing. Are there difficulties with that? Is there that part of you that's like, oh, I should have done this maybe a little different? Or
no. I haven't. I read Demon's Tear like properly, fully, as a novel just before I published it. And I sat down and I had a paperback and I read it, which I'm going to do with Demon's Rise next week.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. I got caught up in the story and the characters. I actually laughed out loud at certain bits, certain things I'd written that I'd forgotten about. Oh yeah, that person says that there. That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I got into it. So no, I don't get it so much with Demon's Tier. I'm proud to go back to that. And most of the things, being an epic fantasy author, I forget names and places and have to go back and go, what was that person called again?
Yeah.
What did they say? And there's some places where I'm referring back to conversations in book one, so I have to look it up and get the right words. It's that sort of thing. It's what I always use Demon's Tier as a reference book.
Yeah.
get in the glossary and go, what were they called again?
Yeah.
Make sure I've got it all right from one place to the other. But yeah, Demon's Rise does start when you get to the end of Demon's Tier. Demon's Rise starts basically the day later.
Okay. Yeah.
Straight on, and the narrative starts straight on. So if you go from one to the other, you probably can just read on through. But what I'm planning to do is include here's the story so far.
I was going to ask.
At the start, in case you've had a break. So I know there's some people who read the first one and then they didn't. It's been a year.
Yeah.
They might want to. Here's what happened, kind of précis, and then they'll be ready to crack on.
Will the story so far kind of be, because I'm wrestling with this too. Are you framing it in such a way that you think it would be sufficient for someone who hasn't read book one? If they dove straight into book two, would that be enough for them to enjoy it? Or is it, no, you need to read book one regardless?
I'm writing it, yes, as if you've never read Demon's Tier, but are picking up Demon's Rise. People might, for one reason or another.
Yeah.
What is the bare minimum? Because I'm trying to keep it down to a page.
Yeah.
Maybe a page or two. What's the bare minimum I need to tell them so they'll know where the characters are and where the story is at the start of book one? So there's lots of stuff I won't tell them. And if they go back to Demon's Tier, they'll get some surprises because you can't tell them everything. That's what the book is for. But it's just to tell you, right, at the point you're reading, here's where they all are.
It's kind of like one of the most difficult tasks as an author, I think we can all relate to this, is creating the blurb after you've written the darn book. Because you have to compress the whole thing down. And I feel like writing the story so far is even worse. My experience so far is it's even harder than a blurb.
You just want to read the book.
Yeah. It is so hard to pick and choose what's essential, for someone stepping into this world for the first time. Anyways, so it's a challenge.
It is, it is. It's a hard thing to write. I actually wrote the synopsis for Demon's Rise before I wrote the book, which is something I will do again.
Okay.
It really makes you think about what the key story beats are, what the main character moments are, and the pacing and everything.
Yeah.
Because writing
you have to have a pretty good idea. Like you have to have a pretty well-developed plot in your mind to pull that off, eh?
Yeah, and I think I did for this one. It was more planned. I don't know, but then Demon's Tier I've been thinking about it for years. I guess with Demon's Tier I knew roughly what happened all the way through, but in some cases I didn't know how it happened. Like, how does that person get to that point? I know they're there, but how do they get there? And I know they have a conversation, but what do they say? I knew the outcomes, but not necessarily the method.
So you're still filling in a lot of the gaps as you.
Oh yeah. I'm very much between a plotter and a pantser. There were some sections of Demon's Rise actually I wrote it completely as discovery writing. I had a scenario where I put the characters in, and I knew they had to get out of it, but I genuinely didn't know what they were going to do. Yeah. I thought, let's let the characters solve this, and I just wrote and I got them to behave as the characters would, and do you know what? They found a solution. It was really, really surprising. And then that put them back on the path that I had plotted, and then off they went. So it's a real hybrid for me of having a real strict plan and then ignoring it.
I am the same. I'm the exact same. I'll have a pretty developed plan, but I will ignore big chunks of it. I will happily cast it aside if the story just ends up being something different. But I like having that structure at least to begin.
I find it hard to. The times when I write really slowly or get stuck is because I'm not sure what's happening next. Yeah. And then often it's towards the end of books when I've got lots of complex stuff happening. Like you'll know this when you read the end of Demon's Tier. There's lots of moving parts, and I'm almost like I had to write everything that happens on bits of paper and just move them around until I was like, okay, this is the order I'm going to write it in.
Yep.
Like notes and notes and notes and notes until I'm got it fixed in my mind as to the order everything's going to happen in. But the rest of the time, I can just sort of let it flow.
Yeah, the danger of these complex worlds we create, when you reach that crescendo, there are so many things happening, and you have to tie off knots, you have to close loops, and you have to somehow keep it all in your mind.
You got to kill a couple characters.
I'm not such
simplify
a big
things a little bit.
character killer. I'm going to say this slightly reluctantly. I mean, there is people who die, surprisingly and horribly. Yeah. But it's not something I do often.
In writing Song of Bones, my little mouse and rat story, there was one rat who I keep killing. Throughout book 1, he died maybe 3 times. Each time, like, well, he can live a little longer. He didn't die. I thought I had him dead yesterday, but the way it turned, like, he's still alive. He will eventually die, I'm sure, but it keeps turning out he doesn't die.
Is he like Kenny from South Park?
Yeah.
No, he's well, I mean, yeah, I guess in the behind the scenes drafts, yeah, he's died several times. He's been murdered, he's been suffocated, he's been melted. What else? He got turned to, I won't say, but yeah, he's like Kenny from South Park. He's a pretty fun character though, so I'm kind of happy he's still around.
I mean, I know. So now I'm not going to be able to read this without thinking of Kenny. It's great. Oh man, yeah, that's wow. Way to ruin Isaac's writing for me.
Sorry, I apologize.
See if you can spot Kenny in the story. He's the one who's not dying.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh man, yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I mean, I think we had this. I feel like we need to ask. I've only watched, I think, the first half of the first one. I like horror movies, but zombie movies are very tricky for me. I often can't get into them. But we were chatting before, and we wanted to ask you because the 28 weeks later, or 28 days later, 28 weeks later, 28 years later just came out. I don't know how much horror you watch. But 28 years later, set in the UK, right? Yeah. So we wanted to ask, do you think you could survive?
Yeah, we've got a plan. I'm not a horror fan at all. I've seen a couple of horror movies. In fact, one I watched without realizing it was a horror movie on my own, and it was just like, oh no, and I couldn't turn it off because I needed to know what happened. Yeah, and it stayed with me for months and months. I still think about it now. Oh God, why did I watch that? Yeah, I'm a total wuss. I don't like.
What movie was it?
Horror. It was Wolf. What's that one? The Australian one? Wolf something. Wolf Creek.
Wolf Creek. Is it the serial killers in Australia?
So, yeah, there's a bunch of backpackers, and then they get kidnapped and killed in horrible ways. That's the entire movie.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, not good. So yes, no, I don't read or watch horror at all. However, we talk about a zombie attack plan. I'm a member of a canoe club, and we're like, well, we'll have boats. When they come, we'll have boats. They won't be able to use boats. So we're going to head straight down the river, which is just over there, out into the bay. And there's a couple of islands just between Somerset and South Wales, called Flatholme and Steepholme, named by the Vikings. And we're going to go there. There's animals there, and there's fishing, and we'll be fine. That's the plan.
Genius.
That's basically the setup for 28 years later. Yeah. So you are the main character in 28 years later, basically.
28 years later, South Wales version.
Yes.
Just go to an island and stay there for a long time.
Yep. Seems like a good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I said, I fluctuate with horror. I've had a lot of trouble finding horror books I like. It's very rare that I read a horror book I like. There've been a few, but it's been years since I really dug my teeth into one and thought this hit all the right notes for me. This was good. I get that kick, I think, a bit more from dark fantasy now. Like I recently read a Michael R. Fletcher book, and it hit all the perfect notes, but it was definitely a step away from horror. Really, the fantasy was the focus.
Yeah,
but that kind of grimdark feel, it hit enough of the horror notes for me. I was like, perfect. It gave me that fix. Movies and shows, I have to be in the mood, and it comes and it goes. Right now I'm definitely not on a horror fix. It's been probably a solid year since I've watched a good horror movie.
I think it's something to do with my imagination. It just these things just stay with me, and in my mind they become real. I was the same with Jurassic Park as a kid. I was convinced there were dinosaurs outside the house. I could hear them.
That's funny. Yeah.
My imagination is so vivid. I don't need that kind of stuff.
Fair.
Having said, I don't read horror and I don't write horror. There are some darker elements in Demon's Rise. There's certain things happening in Demon's here that are that's not very nice. But Demon's Rise steps it up a little bit. And I thought I sort of wrote it, and then I read it back and went, "Oh God, where's that come from?" Whoa.
Just having a bad day, and it came
out. Yeah. So it's more moments, these little moments where you're like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
And sort of, those bits of tension where people don't know quite what's going on, and they feel like there's something around the corner going to jump out. Yeah.
Well, again, kind of the nice thing about fantasy in particular, you can incorporate those elements in from other genres, and they work. Like fantasy in particular, especially depictions of evil or just, chaos. I like borrowing from horror. I think it really works well in fantasy. It's almost essential. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, how are we feeling? I mean, we're an hour and a quarter been chatting. This was an absolute blast.
I'm trying to think of anything we haven't talked about. Like we've been over horses, guinea pigs, swords. I mean, zombie plans.
We've covered the whole
pretty thorough.
So say again?
Pretty thorough.
Yeah. I mean, we joke because I think the longest we've ever been on with a guest the whole time was 3 hours. That was with EL Lions. Yeah.
Oh, and you thought that was long? I watched most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the only time we've gone longer than that was just the other day. But what happened there was Mike Nunnally, his internet was down, so I just hopped, and Isaac was away too until later. So what happened was I hopped on for an hour just chatting. My audiobook was about to come out, all this other stuff. So I'm just goofing off with people in the chat. And then about an hour in, I get a message saying from Mike, "Oh, my internet's back. I can hop on." So I send the link. He hops on. We're at it for another hour and a half. Then Isaac gets home. He's like, "Oh, it's still going. I'll hop on." So it turned into a 4-hour stream, but at least that was split, So we were trying to combat the pernicious impression that we always go really, really long. So for those who don't have as much time, look at this. We've done it. We've done a show in less than an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, it's been really good fun. I mean, really had a good time. Good questions.
No, well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say about Demon's Rise or anything else?
Will I just quickly flash my books up before I
flash the books.
So I'll do them in these are in chronological reading order. There is a reading order. They're all my books are in the same world.
Okay.
You don't need knowledge of any to read them. So if you pick up Demon's Tear first, you can just crack on with that. There is a moment in Demon's Tear where if you have encyclopedic knowledge of all my previous books, will be slightly more emotional than if you haven't. But I acknowledge that probably really only affects me. So obviously, as we've talked about, the first book, Path of Blades, standalone novel, very medieval fantasy based.
Clip here too. There we go.
Oh, he's got it there. Excellent. It's been out a couple of years. People seem to enjoy it. They whip through it pretty quickly, which is nice. The next one it's not a series, but it does follow on. Some of the characters continue. Is Tan's Last Stand, which is the first book I wrote, which has very much more of a Western fantasy feel, which was really fun to write. People going into saloons and
so you wrote it first, but it comes after Path of Blades.
Yeah, I wrote Tan's Last Stand, and it was a simple book, but I figured that there were some of the characters that I really hadn't gone into in any depth that had depth, and I wanted to explore that. Path of Blades was my way of exploring the depth of those characters.
Love it.
And then that's followed chronologically by Demon's Tear.
There we go.
Hey, which is a bigger book. Obviously, the first book in the Jantakai Saga sets the scene for everything that's going to happen. Again, some characters continue. So the character of Carrollton Tan, who was present in Path of Blades, Tan's Last Stand is named after him. He's also makes an appearance in Demon's Tear. He's a side character, but he's a guy I really like, so I like to throw him in. It's epic fantasy, very much character based. You've got two groups of people. One's a guy on his own called Ian, and there's a bunch of women who you can actually see on the cover there. The cover design included them, which I think is a really cool little touch. So you got Ian up there in the top right, and then the three women are down at the bottom there. And then Demon's Rise, like I said, continues straight on from the climax of Demon's Tier. You haven't got that one on. No, you haven't got that one. Which is the same characters, mostly, and there's a couple of new characters. One of whom, I don't know if you saw, we did a stream at Christmas where we did a D&D session with Tom Buckbeard. He was our DM.
Okay.
And we all role played as one of our characters, and I picked a character from Demon's Rise called Clay, who's a dwarf. Who is I just know he's going to be a lot of people's favorite characters. He's like Gimli from Lord of the Rings, but if Gimli was a real nasty bastard, you know.
Was that on the Beards of the Apocalypse one, or was that?
No, that was with the Secret Scribes.
It was the Secret Scribes one. Okay,
no, Dave Lawson was called in. Greg was. Oh, I forgot who Greg was. Who else was there? Sean was played Spricket. Yeah, it was really fun.
Yes,
really
I remember
fun.
seeing that. Yeah.
So I did Clay before he'd actually appeared in print because he's not published yet. But I'm pretty sure he's going to be one of everyone's favorite characters when he appears.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's what I've done. So obviously, and then we've got the Secret Scribes anthology, which will be my next bit of published work, which comes out sometime this year, maybe later in the summer.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's very soon then. I was thinking like fall or something, but
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Fair, yeah.
I was just stitched Bill and Alex up by saying, "Yeah, it's out next week." That's
yeah, Alex is going to be having a freak out after this.
Rob, shut up.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Anthologies are a heck of a lot of fun, but a lot of work and a lot of work to organize. So props, very cool that you guys are doing that.
So yeah, that's me. You can find me on most of the social media places. I do a bit of TikTok, generally me chatting. On Twitter, I've got a mailing list. If you're interested, let me know. I'll give you the link. My books are all on Amazon. They're available in paperback, ebook, Kindle Unlimited. No audiobooks yet, but like we've discussed, I'm working on it. I don't think I'm hard to find. If you've got any questions about my world, my writing, come and speak to me. Just send me a message. I'm always happy to talk.
Brilliant. Yeah, and anyone watching on YouTube, all the links will be there, or I think they already are, and any we've missed, I'll be sure to add. So any of Rob's links will be there for you, and and then obviously on X where this is streaming as well. Be sure to give Rob a follow at it's Rob Sanders 56, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah, and well, thank you again so much for coming on. This was a blast.
Thanks for having me. That's been really good fun. It's timed really perfectly.
It's nice actually getting to connect with some of our UK friends, because that's the thing. I feel like all my UK friends are always, same with Australia. All my Australian and UK friends are different. All these talk shows usually happen at the worst times for all of you. So it's nice that we're able to do this in the middle.
Yeah, it's nice to meet up a bit. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's been great. So nice to meet you, Isaac. We haven't really met before. Nice to meet you, Tim, properly. Watcher of the Damned. It's a great show. So well done, Tim.
Yeah, great timing, RH.
Yay!
Perfect.
Cheers. All right, everyone. Well, we're going to sign off. We'll do an awkward wave while it finally gives us a little stream, and have a great day, everybody.